I'm Ian Dille.
And I am Michael Sheehan. Today we are going to dive into the upcoming Vuelta a España. And we are going to get down to the bottom of one question we've been asking ourselves. Is the Vuelta the hardest Grand Tour on the calendar?
Yes.
We'll get into that a little bit later. But first, let's get into the course. What are we going to be seeing at the Vuelta in 2019? It kicks off with an opening team time trial. It is just 13.4 kilometers long, but that is going to set up the pecking order for the remainder of the race. There is one other time trial event in the race, and it is actually not in Spain. It's in France, in Pau, where, if you will remember, the Tour de France just had its individual time trial as well, which was won by Julian Alaphilippe. They are different courses, and I am happy to say that the Vuelta time trial course is actually quite a bit harder.
Yeah, of course, this being the Vuelta, they did have to make it a little bit more mountainous. It takes place in a valley just on the other side from the time trial course at the Tour de France. There are also 6 flat sprint stages, which is a bit of an anomaly for the Vuelta that tends to, even all the flat stages, finish on uphill. But this has drawn a really talented sprint field. We're going to have Sam Bennett, Fernando Gaviria, John Degenkolb, and last but not least, certainly Mark Cavendish. It'll be interesting to see how he rebounds from being left off the Tour de France roster by Dimension Data.
Yeah, there is going to be a lot of sprinting action intermixed throughout the entire tour, all the way into the third week, and it does finish with a processional sprint into Madrid. There are 4 intermediate, they call intermediate, kind of hilly stages throughout the Vuelta, but these are no joke. The second one is actually finishes on a Cat 1 mountain. So these intermediate stages, while they may look like kind of like ride-off, not the hardest of the tour, they have the potential to be quite decisive.
Yeah, and then above these medium mountain stages are the 9, count them, 9, almost half of the stages in this Vuelta a España are classified as full-on mountain stages. The Vuelta, of course, is considered a race for the pure climbers, and this one is not going to disappoint. Which stage are you most looking forward to?
I am really looking forward to the stage in Andorra. It is stage 10, I believe. Actually, stage 9, I stand corrected. It is only 95 kilometers long, and they have packed 5 categorized mountain passes into this really, really short, explosive stage. The final 20 kilometers have 3 climbs. They are just stacked one on top of another. It is going to be an insane stage. It's going to be so fun to watch from kilometer 0.
I am most looking forward to stage 18. This is a stage that takes place in the central mountain system right outside of Madrid, where the race will finish on stage 21, of course. And this race features 4 category 1 climbs almost back to back. It's a really interesting route. It actually goes over the same mountains, it goes over 2 mountains 4 times, basically. It does the route out and back, does a little lollipop, and comes back over the same mountains. I've never really seen a course like that. I'm looking forward to it. And then, of course, this being the penultimate mountain day at the Vuelta, it is going to be a big GC battle.
Yeah, and let's get into just what GC battle we are going to see emerge throughout the course of the race. Teams have been holding their rosters pretty close to their chest at the moment, but we are starting to see some contenders coming out and announcing their participation at the Vuelta, and there is one roster that on paper looks pretty darn imposing, and this is a team that is known for this, Team Movistar. They have 3 Grand Tour winners on their Vuelta a España roster, 2 of whom have won the Vuelta in the past. Those, of course, are Alejandro Valverde and Nairo Quintana, and the 3rd Grand Tour winner, this year's Giro d'Italia champion.
Yeah, Richard Carapaz will be returning to the Vuelta. You can watch him racing at the Vuelta a Burgos as the first race that he's done after winning the Giro. We are broadcasting that live and on demand on FloBikes, and it'll be really interesting to see Carapaz coming into this race as a recent Grand Tour winner. What sort of form is he going to show up with? I feel like people are still not giving Carapaz his due credit for winning the Giro d'Italia quite impressively, I might add, and I think this is his opportunity to really take the reins, take the leadership. But he will have to beat his own teammates. Movistar is notorious for not working well together as a team, with Nairo Quintana announcing that he is moving to Arkea Samsic, and Carapaz himself rumored to be moving to Team Ineos. I am not seeing great cohesion going on Movistar.
Yeah, there is going to be a lot of behind the scenes uncooperation, I think, on Movistar, especially this late in the season when everybody already has their 2020 plans lined up, and for those 2-star riders, they do not include being on Movistar anymore. A team that is showing up to the Vuelta that I think is really going to be able to challenge Movistar is Yumbo Bhisma. They have another really, really stellar roster on tap for the Vuelta. It is being led by Steven Kruijswijk, who finished 4th at last year's Vuelta. He was 3rd at this year's Tour de France. He is on phenomenal form. A rider who I'm really excited to see what he can do, whether he plays a support role for Kruijswijk or whether he goes for the GC himself, is George Bennett. He did not get a lot of credit in this year's Tour de France. He was riding the front on stage 1 the entire day to bring it back for a sprint, which I thought was a little bit weird because he is a GC rider. He ended up sitting 4th overall for over the first week of the tour until he lost a lot of time in a really stupid getting bottles in the crosswind stage, but he has been consistently top 10s in multiple Grand Tours. I would really, really like to see him go for the win as well and keep himself up there with Kruijswijk as long as possible.
I would like to make a correction. Steven Kruijswijk will not be the leader for Jumbo Visma. Primoz Roglic will actually be the leader for Yumbo Bhisma. I am certain of it. Primoz, who has not raced a day since finishing 3rd overall at the Giro d'Italia, will come into this Vuelta with fine form and finally get that Grand Tour win that we've all been expecting out of him.
He looked really tired after the Giro. I'm not.
He looked exhausted.
I'm not sure he's recovered enough from that. But there you have it. You have 2 teams with 3 really, really, really good GC riders lining up, and I think it is going to be a battle between Jumbo Visma and Movistar. At least on paper. Another team that we have not touched on, but we would be remiss to skip over, is Ineos. What is Ineos doing at the Vuelta?
We don't know. We are hoping that Geraint Thomas lines up at the Vuelta a España, and I truly believe that he should. They have been sort of secretive about their roster as well. Geraint Thomas has been placed on the start list, taken off of it. This is a guy who, proved that he is a bona fide Grand Tour rider after winning the Tour de France last year, following that up with a 2nd place to his teammate Egan Bernal this year. I think he owes it to himself, he owes it to us, the fans, to line up at the Vuelta and show that he can race 2 hard Grand Tours back-to-back and he can win the Vuelta a España. We have seen Instagram posts of Geraint Thomas drinking beer, eating burgers. I think this is just an effort to toy with his rivals. Geraint, be a true bike racer, go to the Vuelta and try to win it.
Whatever the case, it does seem like they have Jonathan Castroviejo on tap for the Vuelta, the multiple time Spanish national time trial champion, and Teo Gegenhardt, who is having a predictably really, really good year. He looked like he was going to be in the running for the white jersey at the Giro d'Italia, but crashing took him out of that. I would really like to see him take a run at white jersey at the Vuelta this year.
Would be remiss also if we did not mention Simon Yates' intention to race the Vuelta a España. Of course, he is the defending champion, yet this would be his 3rd Grand Tour of the year. A GC rider riding all 3 Grand Tours is more or less unheard of in the modern era of professional cycling. But I think if any rider can do it, it is Simon Yates. It did seem like he came into the Giro d'Italia a little bit off his form, not fully prepared for that race. He had an incredible Tour de France, of course, taking 2 stage wins, but riding the Gruppetto a lot of that race. So I think he could come back to the Vuelta on solid form. And the Vuelta also is sort of a low-pressure race, If you start it and it's not going that well, then you can kind of hang it up and move on to the following season.
Yeah, and let's get into just what the Vuelta a España is, because there is this question. A lot of people say it is the hardest Grand Tour of them all, but the rosters are always a little bit shaky at the Vuelta. This is where a lot of neo-pros are sent by their teams for their first Grand Tour, so it isn't the most experienced peloton always. But the courses are really, really challenging at the Vuelta, and there's no way around that.
Yeah, I mean, the Vuelta does have shorter courses. This year's race is 200 kilometers shorter than the Tour de France. But when you're talking about 9 mountain stages, when stage 5 of this race finishes on a Category 1 climb and it's not even categorized as a mountain day, you're talking about an incredibly hard race. And I think it's not so much the parcours that make a race. As we well know, it's the racers, and the Vuelta is certainly a race of desperation.
This is a time of year when a lot of riders need contracts. They haven't gotten a result all year. They are going to be very, very, very hungry to show up, roll a breakaway, take some chances that they may not take earlier in the year. There are also just a lot of tired legs out there. There are racers who've been at this. This is going on over 60, 70 race days for them. Some of these guys are cooked.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the mental fortitude it takes to win a stage, much less the overall at the Vuelta a España, it is incredible. Let's take Ben King as an example from last year. This is a racer who raced the Spring Classics at the very start of the season, and then came back and won 2 stages at the Vuelta a España on summit finishes, no less. He is not necessarily a climber, but it just shows that grit, determination can get you a result, can get you a victory at the Vuelta a España. And I think the same thing goes for the overall. You're racing against mental fatigue as well as physical fatigue. If you look at Chris Froome's back-to-back wins at the Tour de France and the Vuelta a España in 2017, he called the Vuelta a España the hardest Grand Tour he's ever raced. And I think that just goes to show how incredibly hard it is to win a Grand Tour this late into the season.
It's going to be a doozy. We are really, really looking forward to seeing it. We're looking forward to seeing the rosters emerge over the coming week. Remember, you can watch the Vuelta a España on FloBikes if you are in Canada.
Tune in. We will be back with updates from the Vuelta.